All right, welcome everyone. It is 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name's Olivia Wyatt. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a student representative for APA Division 47. I'm going to talk a little bit first about why we're here, and then we'll do introductions of the student reps, the presidential trios, and then go more through the agenda for this evening and then get going into the discussion. So thank you all for being here today, our presidential trio state of the field. It's exciting to be here with you all today for those who have joined live as well as those who watched the recording. Thank you. Discussions for this event began about a year ago as we as students had been noticing conversations in our classes, in both doctoral programs and master's programs, as we've been trying to navigate our professional homes and our passion for the field about just kind of what's going on in the field and what's the future. And as we learned more about both of these organizations, we've come to find so many similarities and dedicated professionals and we wanted to increase this connection between the two. So thankfully, when we pitched the idea, all six presidents jumped on board right away. So we want to thank you all for your service to the field and for taking the time to give us tonight. So before I transition to introductions and then again to the agenda, I just want to thank all of you for attending and watching. We had about 500 people register for this event, really demonstrating the community and dedication to this field, which as students makes us really excited as well that we are here. So first, I'm going to transition over to Aidan to briefly introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aidan Kraus. I use they, them pronouns, and I am one of the APA Division 47 student representatives.
Emily.
Good evening, everyone, or, I don't know. I shouldn't assume good evening, but great to see you all here wherever you're at. My name's Emily Murphy. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a AASP student representative.
And Deyja.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deyja Enriquez. I am at Boston University and am the AASP newest student representative.
Perfect. Thank you. We're going to transition it to all of our presidential trio introductions. So Bob, I'm going to ask you to go first, and then we'll go down the line with ASP and then to APA Division 47.
Great. Well, hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm Bob Harmison. I currently am the immediate past president of ASP. I'm at James Madison University, where I split my time between being the director of sports psychology for athletics and also a professor in our graduate psychology department. And maybe two other things that might be important to know about me in terms of maybe where I'll be coming from in terms of my perspective. I've been a certified mental performance consultant for the past 20 years. And also I'm a licensed clinical psychologist here in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Betsy.
Thank you. I'm Betsy Shoenfelt. I'm the ASP president. I am University Distinguished Professor Emerita at Western Kentucky University, and I'm the principal consultant for strategic performance solutions. I am also a licensed psychologist and have been a CMPC for about as long as Bob has. And I will say I'm not in witness protection, despite what other people may say. Just having a little lighting issue tonight, so please bear with me.
And Brandonn.
Well, good evening. My name is Brandonn Harris. I am currently a professor and the program director of sport and exercise psychology at Georgia Southern University, along with Dr. Megan Bird, who I think is on here somewhere on someone's screen. I am currently the president-elect of ASP. I'm in Statesboro, Georgia. My perspective is, I think, fairly similar in some ways to several folks on that'll be speaking tonight. I come from a research and kind of academic background in terms of holding a faculty role, working exclusively with graduate students in sport and exercise psychology. I'm also a certified mental performance consultant and do quite a bit of work, from that perspective, and then also a licensed professional counselor. And so Dr. Bird and I actually oversee the sports psychology services for Georgia Southern University athletics and work as a part of a more collaborative team with sports medicine in our counseling center to kind of triage and oversee comprehensive care for our student athletes on campus. and spent a good deal of time in terms of the applied work, with some professional groups, and then also, as I mentioned, on our campus at Georgia Southern. Pleasure to be here tonight with you all.
Thank you, Brandon. Amanda, you can start us off for Division 47.
Oh, we're gonna start from the back. Okay. Hi, I'm Amanda Visek. Welcome. My role this evening is as past president of APA Division 47. I'm also an establishing editor for AASP's newest scientific journal, so I kind of bridge both organizations in that way currently. My primary professional role is as a faculty researcher at the George Washington University here in Washington, D.C. I am also an active CMPC working with athlete clients. And the additional role or lens, I guess, that I come at this with is from the significant amount of time and collaboration and research funding that I've had working directly with national sport governing bodies, both here in the United States as well as abroad, to bridge science practice.
Thank you. Julie?
Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Julie Vieselmeyer, best affirmed by she, her pronouns. I am the current president of APA Division 47, the Society for Sport, Exercise, and Performance Psychology. The main professional role that takes the majority of my time is as a clinical health psychologist at Swedish Medical Center in Seattle, Washington. And in that particular role, it's very team-based, and I prepare patients for surgery, much like you would prepare a client for an athletic event or a performance. And then I get to do a little exercise psych along with that. I love that our student reps asked about what other professional roles or experiences have contributed to our lens. And I have about 20 years of coaching experience in both high school and collegiate running, as well as master's age athlete or triathletes and runners. I've done some teaching up at Western Washington University in sports psych and sports soc. I have a small private practice in the Seattle area, mostly working with athletes. And then the last several years, I've gotten to work with Z Girls, which is a sport-based youth development program, a nonprofit in the Seattle area that's focused on building confidence and addressing mental health challenges in youth female athletes. And I served as the chairman of the board of directors for a number of years.
Thanks, Julie. And Jess?
Yes, I'm last. So Jess Bartley, I am Senior Director of Psychological Services at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. So my role is overseeing mental health and mental performance for Team USA and our national governing bodies in the U.S. My role with APA Division 47 is President-elect. I'm currently located in Colorado Springs at our Olympic and Paralympic Training Center here. And the lens, I done a little bit of coaching. I am also a CMPC with AASP. I'm a licensed psychologist, and I came most recently from the University of Denver. So I just took on this role at the USOPC about 3 years ago. But prior to that, I was a faculty member and a researcher in the master's program there in sports psychology at DU. So a lot of different lenses, probably important to say too that I am currently housed in sports medicine as well. So that often kind of impacts my lens, my line of work. So thanks.
Thanks, Jess. So a little bit of information about how we're going to go about today. We have about 9 to 10 questions that we've gathered from you all submitting questions during registration, and then kind of merging them into questions that we think will be really beneficial for our panelists to talk about today. At least one president from each organization will answer each question. Showed earlier what the question topics are. I'm going to again post them in the chat in a second. If you have a clarifying question about what a panelist has said, please type that into the Q&A or the chat, and one of the student reps will address it. We're going to spend roughly 7 to 8 minutes per question, so we can't answer everything. And knowing that there's likely going to be follow-up, please direct those questions and follow-ups to the AASP or APA Divisions 47 student reps, and we'll post those emails in the chat as well. And we're going to send out an email with the recording. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deyja to ask our first question.
All right, thank you. So yeah, like Olivia said, we're going to do our very best to spend about 7 to 8 minutes on each question. So to start off, just to ask maybe the current presidents would be best for this one. How would you describe the current state of the field of sport exercise and performance psychology? So Betsy, you want to maybe take
Okay, thank you, Deyja. Well, I think the current state of our field is that our outlook is quite bright. For the most part, there's no longer the stigma that was associated with working with a sports psychologist that once was prevalent. In fact, I think now many teams, athletes, and coaches see it as a point of pride if they're working with a sports psychologist. Many, if not most, universities have sports psychologists, and many professional sports teams have sports psychologists on their staff. And the job opportunities are much more plentiful than they once were. I think sports psychology has matured as a discipline, and I think we've become accepted as a discipline. I can remember back in my early career when my department had asked me if sports psychology really was a real thing. And I said, well, yes, there's APA Division 47, and that convinced them that it actually was a real discipline. But now I think we are accepted and respected as a discipline. We have established theories and principles for applied practice that are empirically supported and are grounded in research. And although we're still a multidisciplinary field, most new graduates entering the field have degrees in sport, exercise, and/or performance psychology or exercise science, where 30 years ago, it was not uncommon that practitioners and academics as well had degrees in social psych or physical education or clinical psychology. And they did not have a specific degree in sports psychology, and some maybe even didn't have formal training in sport, exercise, and performance psychology. So now we have practitioners and academics that are entering the field that have been well trained in our discipline. So I think we are in good shape.
So many of those sentiments resonate with me too. I think it's a really exciting time of growth and change in our field. I think we have high expectations of ourselves. I think the public has high expectations of us. One of the other things as I was just reflecting on some of these questions that I recalled from my graduate training is I remember a professor saying sport is a reflection of society and vice versa, society is a reflection of sport. And I really see that being really true during this time. And as Betsy mentioned, we're seeing a lot more athletes and performers having a voice. There's less stigma around help seeking. Parents, athletes, coaches, I think are demanding of services and expecting it. I definitely knew that to be true when I was serving at the University of Oklahoma. And when parents were sending their kids there as student athletes, they expected there would be sports psychology services available to them. We're seeing more resources at the USOPC, the NFL, NBA, MLB. There's just greater access all around. And with that, we're also seeing increased job opportunities. I remember when I was in graduate school, you would see a couple of opportunities and you're thinking, oh, I have 20 people in my cohort and there's like 2 opportunities that have come up this year. And then there's the cohorts ahead and behind me. What am I going to do for a job someday? And now it seems like I'm seeing more jobs and opportunities every day. Along with that, I still think there's some inequitable pay. There's some challenges with work-life balance for people who are working in this field. There's not always the resources that we want. I've heard some of my colleagues say that, when they accept a role as a sports psychology consultant or psychologist, they're expected to do it all and to be working around the clock, weekends and evenings. So I think there's some room for some growth there. Many of the positions in sport, I think, are very glamorized. So there can be little stability and security in some of those roles. And that also is a reflection of just the whole sport industry. You think of athletes who might become injured or a coach who misses out on a championship. And so it's also reflective of the economy. We're seeing more and more roles in ballet with music organizations. So kind of that performance psych side of things, but I think those are often one-off and very created niche roles that are maybe going to individuals who either have connections or just very entrepreneurial. But I think the more we see those, the more there's going to create more growth and opportunities and once again, more access. I think we continue to see growth in the training programs. as well as a focus on diversity of attracting candidates to those programs, which then we're seeing, more diverse providers and consultants, psychologists to better meet the needs of the clients and the people who are seeking those services. So again, a really exciting time. Betsy also mentioned greater respect. I think both in the field of psychology and exercise science. And I was on another call earlier this week, and there were several past presidents of Division 47 who were there who said that's so true. When they would be in a room with other providers of exercise science or psychology, people would kind of question the skill and the value that they brought. And that's not the case so much anymore. My fellow psychologists often ask, well, what is it that you do? But it's more out of a curiosity rather than questioning what value I bring. And I think there's just a lot more interest in what we do and the value that we can add. So there is just so much growth that I think has happened even in the last 10 years. And probably if we go back another 10 years, 20 years prior to that, we see a ton of that growth, but there's still room for lots more. One of the other things that stood out for me is that the field of sport, exercise, and performance psychology is still young when you compare it to certain other disciplines. And so there's more room for growth there. And a good example is, I think many of the improvements that we've seen are in sports psychology. But I don't think we're seeing that same amount of growth and progress in the exercise psychology and in performance psychology. So I think there's more opportunities there and lots more work to be done, which can maybe seem overwhelming, but also very exciting. And then, one of the things that I continue to hear more and more about is that those within and outside our discipline continue to call for more standards for training and practice, and to just have a greater expectation on what it is that we do. Some of the things that we're doing in Division 47 is to work on some professional practice guidelines and both a specialty and a subspecialty status. And I'll probably mention that a few more times throughout this evening. And then at some point, I'll explain a little bit more about what each of those look like. But to kind of sum this up, I like to take the perspective that I might take with a client to look at where we've come from, where we currently are, and where we're going. And I think we're really at a point of some hopefulness and potential and just exciting continued changes in this field. And I'm excited to be part of it. And I think just all of you being here tonight is a reflection of that.
Thank you both so much for a very good summary and staying on time. So I'll turn it over to Emily for the next question.
Thank you both for that. And I know I heard pieces of this mentioned in terms of kind of how we've gotten to this point in the field where we're at currently, as we talked about in the prior question. I want to help us narrow down now into whoever wants to pick up this next one. What would you say the biggest differences are between the two organizations, Division 47 and AASP?
I can start on the Division 47 side. So Division 47 is part of the larger American Psychological Association, which includes 54 divisions in total. And among them, in terms of relativity of size, we're probably about a medium-sized division within that group. APA itself, right, the larger organization, has a lot of resources, including a psychology pack, lobbyists, financial support, administrative support. However, at the divisional level, we don't really see much, I think, if any, sometimes of that. So there are constraints to how we operate as a division. For example, we don't actually have any administrative support, so we don't have an executive director within the executive committee for the division. That falls entirely really to the presidential trio and other members of the executive committee. At times, there are barriers to making changes and probably even downright obstacles when working part of a much, much larger organization. We certainly feel this deeply at the executive committee level, And we also are appreciative and know that members see and feel the effects of this too. So the relationship with APA gives us less autonomy and ability to be really kind of nimble and responsive. But yet on the flip side, being a part of APA also means that as a division, we can offer more programming to our members, more opportunities for continuing education and other benefits like access to the whole host of APA journals. Those of us who have been members and leaders of the division, we have both perspectives, right? So there's a lot going on in the division. There's a whole lot of expertise here and desire for action. But we're also being led by people who are serving and are already very, very busy people too. So that's a limitation and a constraint that we feel. Our membership is pretty consistent. We have around 1,000 members. There's a lot of overlap in the leadership and membership across the division and with the APA at large, as well as the division, so Division 47 and AASP too. Both organizations, in my experience, we tend to not always do the best job at holding membership and keeping early career professionals. Being a part of these professional organizations is what we would call kind of a quote luxury of time and money. When we think about where we invest our time, which is a scarce resource for many of us, and also the cost of membership dues. So many of us will straddle both organizations, and then some sort of find their professional home in one versus the other. And then I guess lastly, having served on the executive board of both AASP and Division 47, I can say that the outputs of both of these organizations and the benefits that members see varies quite a bit, in part simply because of the differences in revenue generated by each organization as well.
That's great information. I appreciate that, and I'm sure we all do. Is there anyone else who would like to contribute to that question?
Well, I'll add my 2 cents. I think Amanda did a great job differentiating the two organizations. And I think I will mention, and correct me if I'm wrong, but all 6 of the presidents represented here are members of both Division 47 and AASP. And so I'm looking forward to a question later on when we talk about how we can collaborate more. So again, as Amanda indicated, AASP is an independent professional association. We say we're the premier professional association for sport, exercise, and performance psychology in North America. And we have international members. We have about 3,200 total members and about 400 international members representing about 50 countries. And I think one thing I'd like to mention that I didn't see another opening for on the questions is that AASP has the Certified Mental Performance Consultant credentialing program. And that we are the only nationally accredited certification for mental performance professionals in the US and Canada, and with more than 1,000 active CMPCs, and we're continuing to grow. In 2017-18, when we started the program, we had only 75 applicants. And then this past year, we had 375 applicants for new CMPCs. So the program is growing. And the CMPC designation demonstrates to clients, employers, colleagues, and the public at large that the individual has met certain standards in terms of education, in terms of mentored work requirements, in terms of passing our certification exam, and agreeing to adhere to ethical principles and standards, which I know Division 47 also has the APA ethical standards. So, and then also at the CMPC, continuing professional development, continuing education is required. And I think we're seeing the CMPC credential being more and more recognized by employers, with it being listed more frequently as at least a preferred requirement for the job, and more frequently as a essential requirement for the job. So we're pretty proud, as you can tell, we're pretty proud of our certification program, and it seems to be doing well.
All right, we are going to transition to the next question. Thank you all. Our next question is related to the history between ASP and APA Division 47. And so first we'd like to invite Brandonn to share a brief overview of the history between the two organizations from his perspective.
Thank you, Olivia. I guess I'll be very brief, and I think a lot of others would be able to chime in with either similar or maybe different experiences. You know, I guess a caveat to this for me is I have served on the executive board for Division 47 for 7 years, and actually just recently rotated off and a past president of the division. And so I mentioned that just to say that it's a different, I guess, perspective, you know, obviously behind the scenes, and then being a member and just kind of operating in different roles over the years. And then certainly, you know, having been a member of ASP since I think 2003, you know, so just over 20 years now, or 20 years. I'm showing my age apparently. And you know, I think a lot of what we're talking about, and it's exciting because things are, and I think one of the reasons we might be excited about this is because things are so different now than they were when a lot of us, at least that are talking tonight, and I think a lot of others that are joining us, you know, 5, 10, 15 years ago. I think the answers to these questions would be significantly different than what we're hearing tonight. You know, over the years between these two organizations, one of the things that I've been asked and that I've just kind of, you know, overheard for quite a while now, you know, is that question: why aren't the two organizations doing more together? And if you really think about it, as Amanda, I think, like, spot on here, a lot of us are members of both. And I think it is becoming increasingly difficult to do that for financial resources, particularly our students. And we know we have, you know, student membership rates, which is wonderful. And also it's difficult in terms of time and then financial resources to be able to, you know, maintain those memberships over time in multiple organizations. And, you know, I've always kind of felt that the leadership of organizations should reflect the members of those organizations. And I think when you look at both organizations, I think the leadership, whether you're, you know, kinesiology or psychology trained, whether you're licensed or not licensed, certified or not certified, you know, you take those demographic characteristics and kind of split them, you know, any way you want to. We have both really in both organizations. And we know that the percentages are different in terms of who's licensed in terms of our membership in Division 47, and then, you know, ASP, and it is quite different from one another. I want to say about 25% of our ASP members, if I'm not mistaken, are licensed, but those are our members. And so I think that, you know, our leadership needs to reflect that. And that can be really difficult to do when we talk about programming and how we meet the needs of those members. And so that might be one of the reasons why over the years, you know, it's been challenging at times, I think, for the two organizations to find opportunities or ways in which we can collaborate. But I mean, I'll just say immediately, I think we are in the midst of a perfect example of how these two groups can do more together. And so I think, you know, I would absolutely applaud our 4 student reps here who have just been outstanding. And I think in terms of putting this together, and then also I think demonstrating that there are, you know, fantastic ways and opportunities in which we can, as two organizations, especially given that a lot of us are members of both, can collaborate. We've done some of that work thanks to Jess as well, with our continuing education programming. You know, Division 47 offering a number of different you know, continuing ed programs that for ASP, and that's had to slow down for a few different reasons, but, you know, there are opportunities there. So I think, you know, we're at, and I'll be completely transparent. I think a lot of us have experienced this kind of growing up, you know, in the field and through grad school. There were at one point, and this may come up again later, and I don't know any other way to say it, but I think kind of territorial wars when when you look at see some folks are smiling, you know what I'm talking about, in terms of like training background. And some people may not be aware of that. And I envy you for not having to, be on the listservs and kind of witness some of the, ways in which that's kind of reared its head. I think we are, and that's what, again, 10, 15 years ago, this would be a very different conversation. I've seen us kind of surpass that. And every once in a while we might hear that on the listers or see that on the listers, but I think that we're at a place right now where that is not the norm anymore. I think we realize that there's space for everybody, which I think is a really, really critical piece, and why this is such an important time and opportunity for both organizations to be able to do more work together without alienating another one. Because when you look at we talk about these organizations as like these things or these entities. The reality is that everybody like in this space, and then our friends and colleagues that could not be here tonight, we are AASP, we are Division 47. It's the members are these organizations. It's not some kind of this other thing that is kind of behind the curtain, like in the Wizard of Oz. It's us. And so I think we're in a position now in terms of both groups to really make massive strides in doing this. And Julie mentioned, and I think she'll probably talk about it again. In my mind, one of the ways in which we absolutely will see these opportunities present themselves it will be when Division 47 is basically forced to make a really important decision because of the governance of larger APA, with this idea of becoming a specialty versus subspecialty, which I think Julie will talk more about. And in order to do either, Division 47 has to have the support and involvement of other constituents within the profession, i.e., AASP and other, sports psychology organizations. So there are ample opportunities now for students and for, I think, professionals in these organizations to collaborate. And I think we're going to see more in the future too, as a necessity. But, we really don't want to alienate one another when we think about these two separate organizations, because we're parts of both, and we are the organizations when you really think about it.
Thanks so much, Brandon. So continuing with that thread, recognizing this history between the two organizations, how will you all as presidents build towards continued growth and collaboration as we move forward?
I was going to jump in on that. And so again, as someone who's also, been a longtime member of AASP, I was the student rep myself before getting much more involved in APA Division 47. And I do think it's important to think of the luxury of time and money. I think there's ways that we can potentially help in that way. What I will say is a few years back, we did explore, could there be some sort of shared membership? Is there discounts for being members of both? And of course, big APA shut it down for us. And so there's just a number of things that continue to get tried out. And maybe this is the opportunity where I, kind of reach out to anyone listening, bring us ideas. We've tried some things. We've done a lot of discounted memberships to really kind of help with the financial burden. We've tried to do CEs together. And so I think there's things that can really work. I do want to point out with, the process that we had to go through to get CEs approved by the American Psychological Association. We had Dr. Shane Murphy do it over his sabbatical. It took hundreds of hours. And so I think that's one thing that I think has been mentioned, but I did want to really highlight again is the fact that all of us are volunteers. And so whether APA Division 47 or AASP, there is some administrative support with AASP for sure. We have very little, if any. But I guess I do really want to mention that piece. And so I think to continue a bit of Brandon's thread, but then also to kind of push us forward is it's just really tough when a lot of us are volunteers. And it's, I would really say that the collaboration is not for lack of desire or wanting to. Sometimes it really just comes down to time and resources. And so if there can be creative ideas, I know I'd like to think that both organizations are always looking for new ideas, committee membership. And I hope this is okay from AASP, but I serve on the Nominations and Leadership Development Committee for AASP. And the number of times that we get told, no, I don't want to chair a committee, I don't want to run for the executive board, it's hard. And so again, I would just really invite the membership who's looking to make some changes to get on committees and get involved. And that's with AASP and APA Division 47. There's lots of projects going on. There's lots of different ways of getting involved. And so I guess I share that because I don't think you have to pick one. I have had the luxury, I would say, of being involved in both, and then chose to kind of follow this leadership path more with Division 47, but I'm not opposed to getting more involved with AASP, should that be an opportunity for me. And so I think, again, we have very, very limited interest in leadership at times. And so a lot of times it is circulating the same folks. No offense, Brandonn. But, you know, I think that there's only so many of us that want to step up and want to serve in this way. But you can really make an impact by being involved in the committees, by chairing a committee, by working on a project, by just simply attending the conferences. And that, again, goes for both organizations. And again, open invitation to bring forward ideas. We'll let you know if we've tried it. We've tried to figure it out. As, again, someone who served as membership committee chair, so many things were shut down between the organizations. Are there opportunities with CEs? I hope so. But I do think this is just such a tremendous opportunity right here and right now that the student reps made this happen. They literally got this on our calendars months ago. I knew to, like, you know, regardless of how busy I am, I knew to reserve this. And so just, you know, that's a couple of pieces that I think would be really important to kind of tuck away is just kind of a call to arms for any of our members on either side. And I shouldn't even say sides, but either organizations, because I think there's a lot of hopefully creative ideas that we can work together more on.
This might be a perfect time to ask, what committees can we get you signed up for at AASP right now? Well, just while we have everybody here, what are you willing
I'm
to?
good. I'm on 2. I'm good.
Well, when Justin and I both found out that we were going to be, you know, starting this really our respective, you know, roles, I think we were both really excited. And I think we're really excited that we were both going to be, you know, starting out, you know, as president-elects at the same time. Because I think, you know, just having worked with Jess over the years, I think we're very like-minded when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And so I think it's fair to say, and I think the other presidents can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, you know, that I think there is a commitment that we can certainly speak to tonight, that we're very interested and open and absolutely willing to try to find new ways for the two organizations to collaborate and do more together. So I think having individuals, and they don't even just have to be in leadership positions, but I think that that's something that's really important to the folks that are representing both organizations. And I'm certainly very excited about that moving forward.
One of the things I think, just to underscore what Jess and Brandonn both just said, is that whether it's the AASP Executive Board or the Division 47 Executive Committee, each and every year for both organizations, one of the biggest challenges that we have is filling the slate for the upcoming positions that are open for these organizations. To Jess's point, there, you know, the recruitment, there's just a lot more no's than there are yeses. So that is something that is on our plate as a priority every year, and it's a challenge. It's very, very tough. And so we do want to engage as many members as possible and have you serve in leadership positions as well. So again, we welcome everyone.
Thanks, Amanda. Betsy, I'll give you 30 seconds and then we're going to.
Okay, I have a quick question for the Division 47 folks. Can people who are non-psychologists join Division 47? I know you don't have to be an APA member, but could you just say something real quickly, like if there are people out there that are interested in joining Division 47?
Absolutely.
Who's it open to?
You can join APA, you can join just the division, you can join either of our subsections, running psychologist or performance psychology. There's different rates for that. You might have to poke around a little on the website to find out how to do that, but reach out to me. I'm happy to help with that. But yes, we welcome any and all. And I think lots of members have had that question in the past, and we'd love to have you be involved, be a member, and reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to help.
Thank you all. All right, Deyja, you're up for the next question.
Yeah, and I think just wanted to mention there, I think from a student perspective, I think once I started, participating and like being engaged in some of these committees, I think that's kind of where my network really started to blossom and really flourish. And like, like we've been talking about, it's not for the money or for anything that we're doing this for, it's for the sake of just pushing this field forward and like wanting to do that work. So I've always been one that like I never liked like, kissing up to people when it came to networking. So I think serving on committees has been like a good way for me to get involved and get to know people, I guess, on a much different level. So I will vouch for that. But looking forward, I guess, what do you all envision for the future of graduate programs that specialize in sports psychology?
Well, I will mention the AASP grad program accreditation that we are developing now. It's designed to accredit graduate level training in both the United States and Canada for both master's and doctoral levels, to help ensure that graduates will have the knowledge, skills, and competencies needed to perform effectively and professionally and with integrity. And the accreditation standards that AASP is developing are intended to help ensure that program graduates will be qualified to become certified mental performance consultants shortly after graduation, because many will still have to do some of their mentored hours post getting their degree. So we are making good progress on this. We developed the accreditation standards in a year ago in February 2023. We developed the policy for site visits this past summer. We've adopted the accreditation standards. We have this next month, we should have complete policies and procedures manual. And then this summer, we will launch the accreditation program and accept the first schools as applicants to undergo accreditation. And those schools should get their decisions December 2025. So essentially, this will help prospective students evaluate graduate programs to help ensure that if they do enter a graduate program with the target goal of achieving CMPC, that they will be well prepared to do that. And I think it will also help ensure that those grad students are prepared for the profession and to meet the CMPC criteria. And that's basically the part that I wanted to speak to, and others may want to say some other things about that. So thank you.
I'm happy to respond to that one from the Division 47 side of things. Well, really exciting to hear about what AASP is doing to accredit some programs. My hope is that there's just more training programs at all levels, because I think there's a need for consultants and psychologists, and there's plenty of clients out there that could benefit from our services. From our end of things, it comes back to our connection with APA. And so one of our big projects has been to work on the professional practice guidelines, and eventually that will lead to applying for a specialty or subspecialty status. Those words might not mean a whole lot to you, but what I can tell you is the professional practice guidelines consist of an APA approved policy for professional practice that is related to a particular population or practice area. And there's numerous areas of psychology that already have those professional practice guidelines in place, things like cognitive psychology, child psychology, health psychology, neuropsych, counseling psychology, couples and family, the list goes on. And, at one point we were denoted as a proficiency, and APA has sunsetted that and said that we've needed to move towards this. And this is a particular taxonomy or a way of classifying that gives more of a common language. Like when you look at the field of medicine, they use a common language for certain things that's an understood level of training and expertise. And so that's what APA is encouraging us towards, and that's kind of our next step in this whole process. Over the last, well, this process started probably a decade ago, but it's really been the last 2 years that we've made a lot of progress in developing these professional practice guidelines, and we've had over 20 writers and a professional editor helping us work on this whole process. It's been members of both APA and AASP who've contributed to this quite extensive document that in the next couple of months you will see it go up for public review. So you'll have an opportunity to comment on all of those things. I think this is a really exciting piece for us. And the questions about the training programs, but where I see this is that I would hope that AASP accreditation and these training programs would align with these professional practice guidelines and eventually what is going to be in an approved specialty or subspecialty. Just to give you a little bit more information about a specialty, this is right from APA. There's a whole document. It's probably about 50 pages long of what it means to be a specialty or a subspecialty. This goes up for approval for the Commission for the Recognition of Specialty and Subspecialties. Both the American Psychological Association and the Canadian Association for Psychology adhere to these things. And it's characterized as a distinctive configuration of competent services for specified problems and populations, requires a specific advanced knowledge and skills, and there's a sequence of formal education, training, and experience that goes along with that. So there really is quite a bit. But I'm hoping that those two documents and processes kind of really guide the training programs and ensure that we're putting good providers out there to serve the public. In terms of, I don't see us ever having an accreditation necessarily for our members nor for training programs. That being said, this could eventually lead to something some of you may be familiar with in ABEP, or the American Board of Professional Psychology, which again aligns with APA and some of their methods. So that could be down the road, but I think that would be several years down the road before we would ever get there. Would welcome any questions or comments about those professional practice guidelines or specialty or subspecialty, and you're going to see lots more coming out from us on the listserv about those two things in the upcoming months.
Wonderful. Thank you, Betsy, and thank you, Julie. So the next question that we have for you all is, how are you working to increase belonging for those in fields across all training backgrounds? So for example, mental performance consultants and clinicians, practitioners and researchers, as well as sport-focused and non-sport focused professionals. And before we delve into those answers, I'm going to ask Bob to provide some historical context for us.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Aidan. So in my presidential address, I used the word schism to reference various divides that had existed within, historically within AASP specifically, but really more generally within the field of sports psychology. And there's this age-old argument that's been around a long time of who's more qualified to practice sports psychology, those trained in sports science or those trained in psychology. And it was a debate that was 30 years ago was really, really heated. And I see that there are folks on this call that were probably either will remember that debate and were maybe even likely involved in that debate. And it's a debate that's still lingering and has lingered over time. And every once in a while still rears its ugly head. Who is more qualified to practice? And then there's this long-standing tension that between research and practice, in between the need for research to support the practice of applied sports psychology with the reality that athletes and performers really desire practical solutions, not academic solutions to their real world situations, and so finding a balance with that. And more recently, with the emergence of professionals working in areas focused more on performance domains other than sport, I think time will tell if that will be a schism that will arise between sport and non-sport professionals. So, I think this, again, I think there's this long-standing tension that has existed. I think it's part of what growth arises from that potentially, obviously. And the thing that I said in my presidential address is, in terms of sort of bringing increasing belonging, bringing the field together across these training backgrounds, for example, and so forth, is, well, what's common? What's the glue that really binds all of us that we consider to be either academics and or professionals in this field? And to me, that glue is really our sort of fervor and fascination with the optimization of performance, the optimization of involvement in sport exercise, the optimization of satisfaction and personal development in sport and other domains. That's, to me, that's the common. That's what sort of brings us all together, is our interest in that. And I think the opportunities for us to collaborate and work together with each other around those, I think, is really, to me, the key for increasing a sense of belonging across training backgrounds. So whether you're clinically trained or sports science trained, whether you're an academic researcher or a practitioner, it's the interest in this optimization of performance that I think it really is the key to sort of crossing these divides, and there always will be schism in the divide, but how can we bridge those gaps a little bit? To me, that's the key.
Thank you, Bob, for that overview. That was really helpful. Would anyone else like to add on to that question? We have a few more minutes left.
I can comment a little on that. And Bob, I do recall hearing lots about that schism, especially when I was in graduate school, and I've experienced that a couple times, but I feel like that's been less and less, and that there are more people in the field who are seeking that sense of commonality. I mean, it's my personal belief and the experience with many of you in the field that a multidisciplinary approach and just diversity of training backgrounds is valued and makes our whole field stronger. So I hope that's something that will continue. In addition to that, there's enough athletes, exercisers, and performers in this world that a scarcity mindset really doesn't make sense or serve us in any sort of way. And I really don't see it as needing to be a competition on who is more equipped or a better practitioner. It really comes down to your training and your licensure and the scope of practice that you can have based on those things. And that really simplifies things for me. Where I've seen this become a little bit sticky and cause problems, I think for all of us, is when individuals misrepresent their credentials and practice out the scope of their training. And, I think one that particularly comes to mind is when I was in the OU athletic department, one of the sports teams had the resources to hire outside of our department, and they had heard about an expert in sports psychology specific to a certain sport, and they hired them and brought them in. And it was an individual, I'd never heard the name, so I was curious, and so I was invited to observe this session. This individual had zero training in sports psychology or in exercise science. I believe they might have played that sport when they were younger, and they did some magic, and there was even fire, and there was all kinds of things going on in there. There was no sports psychology. And if I had seen that and had been one of the athletes on the team or one of the coaches, it was a great performance. But I would have said, what's sports psychology? I don't have respect for people in that field. And so I think those folks give us a name or a bad name. And we've seen this come up time and time again of how do we kind of police and how do we handle those instances that come up? And that's a challenging one for us. I think, if it is somebody in psychology, you can report them to a state licensure board. But I think it's really hard to kind of manage what the public learns from those individuals and people that are out there. And I hope the more that we can put knowledge and education out there on what our field is, what it does, what the training and the experiences that are necessary to provide services, that just helps everyone make educated choices in who they're asking to serve, and less competition for those of us who actually have the training and experience. In terms of increasing belonging for those in the field, Division 47 has really had to kind of take a step back and say, yes, this is one of our values and something really important to us, but we've needed to really do the inner work. And so what that's looked like for us is starting at convention last year and ongoing, we've been revising our mission, vision, and values, and really sought to figure out what our identity is. And that means figuring out who our members are and who we serve, both in terms of the membership and in the public. And we've taken that several steps further in terms of having a dialogue with members at convention. Even over the past couple weeks, we've had a listening tour led by our EDI co-coordinators and some focus groups for this mission, vision, values, and identity, led by the working group within the EC. And I anticipate this is going to be an iterative and an ongoing process. We've also recently engaged it's called the Past President's Advisory Council. And so that goes back almost 40 years now, just to give us some additional history, context, wisdom, and a blessing as we who are currently on the EC make decisions and move forward in how we believe some of these things should be moving forward in the field, and with trying to increase this sense of belonging.
I think that was very well said, and I appreciate the iterative process that you named there, because I know, even in the chat, maybe there's a little bit of tension, but within the broader room, I can imagine that there might be people feeling things, but again, one step at a time. So you gave me a great segue, Julie, into my next question for the panel, which is, how are APA and AASP both helping to, number one, educate the population about what sports psychology is, and then also number two, differentiate between a mental performance consultant and a sports psychologist?
Emily, I can start us here and just give you just one really quick example of how both of our organizations have been able to do that. So the NCAA has a mental health advisory group that I'm represented AASP for, and I know Brandonn was also representing Division 47 at the time, and I think Julie now is in that role. And I see Jess shaking her head, and she was also on that working group, or on that advisory group, representing the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. And so it was and that group was tasked with updating the mental health best practices document that had been around, I think, since about 2016, to guide the NCAA member institutions in terms of addressing the mental health needs of student athletes. And so we were tasked with updating that document, and there were opportunities for us, Brandonn, myself, Jess, and a couple of others that had sports psychology backgrounds, to within that group sort of advise, educate that group, which was representative of other aspects of sport and exercise science. And there were athlete ally representation. Our organization was represented, the Trevor Project, the Dread Foundation, the sleep organizations, other psychological associations that were like Asian Psychological Society of Psychologists, so on and so forth. So it was this group, and so we had this opportunity, and there was some collaboration that we did prior to our meetings to say, hey, how can we educate this group about what sports psychology is, and not only addressing and looking at mental health holistically, addressing not only the ill-being aspects of mental health, which are important and very critical, but also the well-being aspects of mental health, and where does mental performance fit in that. And so and it was, I think it was our roles, in the case was Brandon and my roles within our organizations allowed us to be able to sort of coordinate and collaborate and as one voice represent really what sports psychology is and what it isn't and what a mental performance consultant is and so on and so forth. And that document's, I think, due to come out here soon, and that will reflect our efforts really to try to position non-licensed practitioners and their role in facilitating mental health. And so I think through that, obviously it'll take a while, right, for that to sort of get into the bloodstream. But I think that's an example, a specific example of how we were able to sort of collaborate as organizations and try to have a positive influence on that process.
Bob, I was going to comment similarly, but you did a much more eloquent job of talking about the NCAA Mental Health Advisory Council. What I think is really great about that, though, is they're a much larger organization than either AASP or APA and have a lot more connection to the universities and being able to disperse that information. And having worked at another Division II university, that went out to the athletic trainers and to coaches right away at a past iteration of that information. And so they're kind of doing the work for us. So it's great that that's in place and that we can continue to be involved and have a voice there. What we are doing, APA Division 47, to educate the public institutions and clubs, I think we're doing a very poor job of that. And we've heard that resounding message from our members. And I think we can do a much better job. We've identified this as an area for growth in the upcoming years, and we want to have a greater voice. I think what that looks like from my perspective is that once these professional practice guidelines are completed and we've established as a specialty or subspecialty, I hope to have a lot more resources available on our website for both those who are seeking training in the field as well as for the public who's seeking services. They need to know what they're getting and what they should be looking for and how to really distinguish between those who are going to provide them with the services that they're looking for rather than those who may not have the training and the expertise. So look for more on that from us. And as Jess has mentioned, we'd welcome your ideas on better ways that we can disperse that information and what's necessary.
I will mention a couple of things that actually I thought Bob might mention one of these because he kind of started the initiative on it, but not this. But on our webpage, we do have infographics on to educate the public about what the CMPC credential is and how to choose an appropriate consultant based on the client's needs and their situation, whether it's a CMPC or whether it's a clinical sports psychologist. But what I thought Bob might mention is AASP just hired an external marketing firm to market the CMPC credential. And so this would be to all potential clients ranging from professional sports, intercollegiate sports, all the way down to I don't know how far down it goes, but others who are not at that level. So it's supposed to be an integrated marketing plan that will, across a variety of different marketing channels, convey what they refer to as a clear, consistent, persuasive message about the importance of the CMPC credential to targeted customer audiences. So it will include things like social media campaigns, campaign hashtags, social media copy, video testimonials, targeted emails and ad campaigns, social media advertising, and even direct mail campaigns. So we just signed the contract. So a year from now, we hopefully will have some data on whether or not it's really being effective. But hopefully this will get the sports psychology out in front of the public at a variety, a whole range of level of potential clients.
Thank you all. Our next question is focused on EDI. So I'm wondering where you see the most progress toward equity, diversity, inclusion, belonging, and justice within our field today.
I can go ahead and go and speak to the efforts of Division 47. In the last year, we've been super blessed to have 2 EDI coordinators, co-coordinators, I guess, that have been appointed to the executive committee for Division 47, Dr. Kenza Gunter and Dr. Tanya Pruitt-Wright. Oof, it's late. Dr. Tanya Pruitt-White, both with leadership expertise in this space. So in their appointed positions, what they're really helping us do as a division is to stop and pause and make sure that we take the time needed to view all of our actions and our decisions through that lens with their guidance. Some other examples that we see as representative of EDI within the division is our self-nomination process to serve on the executive committee and to get involved in leadership involvement. So you don't have to be nominated by someone else to put your name forward. We want to hear from as many members of the division and get as many members involved. The other thing that we do within the division is through that EDI lens is making sure that that is also representative in our annual convention programming. So specifically, we have a keynote address called the Stephen R. Heyman Address. It's a keynote lecture during convention that is meant to remember and both memorialize. Steve Heyman is a former president of the division and a leading pioneer in our field. So a goal specifically of that lecture is to ensure that topics that he was passionate about and worked to develop, such as inclusivity, diversity, and equity, are represented on the convention program. I think it's also no coincidence probably that our current EDI co-coordinators, Kenza and Tanya, both gave the Heyman Address in 2018 and 2020. And I guess the last thing that I'll say too, as a division, as we sort of look forward in this space, the EDI co-coordinator positions currently are appointed positions. And so what we are hoping to do as a division is to move these positions from appointed to elected positions with voting rights. So that's something that the division is going to be moving forward and bringing to the membership to vote on in the coming months. So please look for that.
Thank you, Amanda. Would anyone from AASP like to jump in, Bob?
Yeah, I can. I think for it's an observation that I've made. But I think in terms of the leadership, and I'll say specifically the AASP, over the past 5 years, I have seen an amount of progress made in providing opportunities for more diverse voices to have seats at the leadership table. In terms of if you look at AASP executive board over those past 5-6 years, has become more inclusive in terms of race, sexual orientation, gender identity, and so on. And we within AASP, we have a leadership development nominations and leadership development committee. I think Josh, you mentioned being on that committee. But that committee has been pretty intentional about and active in identifying and recruiting folks from various groups within AASP to get representative of our membership folks into leadership positions. And I think what we've seen from these concentrated efforts is I think what's resulted is just more complete representation of the needs of our membership at the highest levels. And I was on our executive board as a professional standard division head right when AASP created a board position. At the time, it was the diversity and inclusion head, and so that position did not exist when I was on the board previously. And then I was off the board for 2 years, and then I came on. And what a difference that made in terms of those e-board meetings, in terms of having somebody specifically with the diverse needs of the membership in mind, where every conversation that was a part of, and then it's expanded beyond that to the point where issues related to diversity, inclusion, equity, and so forth are in our strategic plan intentionally across the board. Obviously, just a start, and there's those voices have been within the organization for a long time, and there's been people very active in promoting issues related to diversity and inclusion. But now having more representation at the table has really made a difference in my mind, and I think we'll start to see that continue to evolve over time in a very positive way.
Thank you so much, Bob. Related to that thread, we want to recognize who is and who's not represented on this panel in terms of the presidential trios and the student reps. And so our two-part question for you is, one, where are the places we are falling short as a community? Two, how can we shift our practices to be more welcoming of everyone, considering all identities and backgrounds?
I can kick us off for APA Division 47. And to be honest, I think a lot of it's been said. I think it was tremendous steps for AASP and APA to develop these leadership positions that center around diversity, equity, and inclusion, to really infuse that into leadership decisions. And, I think that we can continue to grow in those spaces. I think we're still trying to do, again, as Julie mentioned, like this listening tour as we're developing our mission, vision, values, and really our identity. And so I think that there's a number of steps in the right direction, and a number of places we can grow. I think it is important to know that like who you're seeing on the panel is just kind of a slice in time. And I think while there are places we're falling short, our presidential trio as 3 women is the second time in more than 50 years that that's happened at APA Division 47. So taking note of some of the steps that our presidents have primarily been men is huge for us. And we actually put together an abstract for APA convention to talk a bit about that and to talk a bit about kind of what it meant for women to come into leadership. I did want to share, a story when I was coming onto the board. There was a nomination process discussing nominees, and it's like, ooh, but she's pregnant. She couldn't possibly be serving in a term for any role. And so that, again, is where I feel like things have shifted tremendously around the fact that, I've actually had 3 kids serving on the executive board for APA Division 47. So we still have a ways to go. And I still want to really recognize a lot of the progress there, how I might have been boxed out of roles, just because I was a woman or a woman of childbearing age. And again, I have had 3 children in the course of my roles with the executive board. So just wanted to share that a bit. And I think we can continue to create more welcoming spaces. I do think it starts with being more welcoming, having opportunities with the committees, the initiatives, all of the things that are going on. I do think we could have a bit more opportunities presented, but I would also challenge kind of our groups, our members here. Self-nomination is open right now for, I'll say it for both AASP and APA, for committees and for leadership. And so nominate yourself, put yourself out there. I think that that's, a tremendous opportunity that both organizations do this self-nomination process. And again, as Bob mentioned, for someone with AASP who gets told no a lot, I literally am in the process of asking folks to apply for some of the positions and even just to be on committees. We get told no a whole lot. So again, I would love to challenge members to just step up and lean in and try to help us a bit, because I think the more diverse perspectives we can have in the committees, in the chair roles, in the leadership roles, hopefully the more welcoming spaces we can also create. Did I do it for both of us? Sorry.
You did great for Division 47. We're still going to ask someone from AASP.
I mean, I guess a couple things for me come to mind. I think Betsy and Bob can certainly shed more light on this. I mean, I think Jess said it perfectly. So one of the things I've noticed, when I was with Division 47, in that space, and then what I've noticed, within AASP, is that I think we're getting really good now at asking the question, who's not here, as opposed to paying more attention to who has a seat at the table. And I think that's a different way to think about this and how we approach our work. And I think that's really important. And not only that, but as just mentioned, between the two organizations, having specific, members that help remind us of the conversations that we need to be having, when we're making these decisions, whatever those decisions might be, I think is really important. And I think that being said, and this came up with Division 47, and I think it's just as important for AASP too, is that when you have, DEI, leadership positions and individuals, in those roles to, really help make sure that we're not losing sight of, some of the absolute most important aspects of who we are and what we do. I think and this is kind of one of the things that came up when we were, talking about these new roles for Division 47, is it's essential that what is not communicated is that this work is exclusively done by the individuals in those positions. That can't happen. And so I think it's really, really important. And I've been really proud of, I think, both organizations, that everybody in that room and really both organizations take ownership, over what I think Aidan asked here in terms of, these different areas within DEIVJ, and that it's not, the one or two individuals or respective committees that are responsible for making sure that that the organizations are involved in the different processes or doing the things that we want to be doing. And so I think that that's been a really, really, a place where we probably have fallen short for years, that I've seen both groups make a concerted, I think, successful effort in trying to turn that around. I think related to that, I think certainly for AASP, to Bob's point previously about how diverse, a lot of our leadership groups are, is that I think the conversation surrounding, DEI can be very, very difficult for a lot of people for a number of different reasons. And, one of the things I've noticed, when I was the certification council chair, it may or may not surprise you, you get you get a variety of emails, I'll just put it that way, expressing a number of different, I guess, opinions or thoughts about, in that case, the certification process. And, one of the things that I really was grateful for, and that I learned, about that in that experience, is that we are in a profession where we are helping professionals, and we're working with, coaches and athletes and a whole constituent of performers, high level performers. And, one of the things we talk about, and we work on, are helping people learn how to better communicate, more effectively with one another. And yet sometimes it seems that when it comes to like us, as the professionals, that we struggle with that too. And so I think that's been a challenge, particularly within DEI, is how do we have those conversations professionally, honestly, and respectfully. And I have to think that there were times when we have failed at that as well. And I think that I've noticed that I feel like we've been doing a much better job having the difficult conversations, being willing to recognize when we've fallen short, and together trying to find ways in which we can do better, and we meaning everybody in those spaces. And so just as an example, as I think a lot of folks are aware of, with AASP, AASP now uses and has used for I think the past, Bob, Betsy, you have to remind me, it's been maybe 2 years now, the rubric for our conference locations, with a series of questions specifically geared to DEIBJ in terms of making sure that, we're hosting these conferences in locations that are safe, that are welcoming, and are not presenting, challenges or concerns in terms of the well-being and safety of our members. And whether it's one member or 1,000 members, it doesn't matter. It's just as important of a question to ask and area for us to make sure we are constantly looking into. And I recognize with APA or Division 47, we didn't have that luxury because we go wherever APA says we're going. Nonetheless, it's at the top of what's important to Division 47, and I'm really proud of that group as well for what they've done in this area.
Thank you, Brandon, for a very good summary and a glimpse into maybe what our future looks like in our field. So just in the interest of time, maybe we could just get a few people to share just very briefly, maybe just naming maybe one of the largest needs that you see in the field that are significant opportunities to still be filled.
I can go for Division 47. And again, it's a bit of a summary because we really need to understand our mission, vision, values, and our identity, which is a lot of work we're doing now. And then I think one of our biggest needs really is understanding where we fit as far as professional practice guidelines. And again, this specialty, subspecialty, I think it kind of would align us a bit more with AASP and kind of be a bit of a parallel to accreditation. So I think those are kind of our biggest needs and our biggest priorities leading into the next couple of years.
Thank you. Jessica, who would like to tag on to that?
I can jump in, Emily. I don't know if it's one of the largest needs, but I do think it's a need, and I think I've heard some people talking about in this call in terms of people's willingness to volunteer, sign up, participate. I know Betsy in her presidential address made a call for just the importance for members to be involved within AASP. And for me, I see our field in a little bit of a transition, quite honestly, in terms of the folks who sort of founded the field, both academic and profession, are have sort of passed down their knowledge and experiences to that next generation, and then that generation sort of passing down now to this current generation. And so I think there's a need for spots to be filled, for people to shape and mold and influence the field in ways that that those who have founded the field did. And I think that creates a lot of opportunity for young professionals to, as they come into the field, to make their mark, to have their influence. And so to me, I think that the need to sort of replace those leading voices, I think we're in a transition in a lot of ways, and I think that's a pretty important need, and it creates an exciting opportunity, I think, as well.
Thank you, Jess and Bob. I appreciate your insights. I'd like to just spend the last few minutes that we have to really extend our immense gratitude to our two presidential trios of APA Division 47 and AASP. All of them took time out of their days to meet with us beforehand and put a lot of thought and effort into today's event. So we're all really grateful to all of you and are really excited to see the work that you continue to lead us in moving forward. On behalf of the student representatives, thank you all for attending, whether that be live or virtual. We are really proud and excited about how wonderful the turnout was. We had almost 500 people register for this event. So It's been a really great experience, and keep an eye out. We're hoping to continue with an event moving forward focused on EDI. And so thinking about EDI in the state of the field. And so keep an eye out on the listservs and social media for that. If you have any follow-up questions, we will be responding to them through an email that we'll send out. And you're also welcome to send further questions or comments to the student reps via the emails that I will put in the chat and that are also on your screen today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you again for joining us.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.